And we're back.
Welcome to episode 243 of No Direction, the No Direction Network's Pathfinder news, reviews, and interviews podcast. I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Vanessa Maeve Hoskins, also known as Vanessa.
Maeve. I like that.
Thank you.
Yes, Vanessa, you're joining us because unfortunately, Param is subject to an ice storm that is eating his internet and possibly his electricity.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Wait, eating his electricity?
Yeah,
That's
it's ice storms. You should not mess around with ice storms.
Do you get negative calories when you eat electricity?
You get negative calories when you eat ice.
That is true.
What are we doing?
I don't know. We are here to talk about Ancestry Guide with a couple wonderful people.
Absolutely. We are joined by Paizo developers Luis Loza. Welcome, Luis.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And Eleanor Farron.
Hello, glad to be here.
Glad to have you both back. It's an exciting time anytime you're on the show because the Lost Omens line has quickly become like the line that people should be paying attention to. And this is the first hardcover of 2021. It is the Ancestry Guide. It is extremely crunchy for a Lost Omens line, a Lost Omens book. So why don't we start there? I know we talked with Mark Seifter about why this was a Lost Omens book rather than a role-playing game line book. We talked about that a couple of episodes with him, but I'd like your take on it. Why is this a Lost Omens book?
Do you want to start, Eleanor?
Yes, Eleanor.
Do I? Well, it's sort of, I think, a counterpart to the character guide, where we also expanded on the core ancestries and the introduced some new Galarian-specific ancestries. And in that case, as well as in the Ancestry Guide, it was focusing on the Galarian-specific cultures and heritages and flavor of these ancestries. So this is sort of like the sequel, but a lot crunchier because there are more ancestries, and we didn't have those big organization sections. But it's sort of the spiritual successor, I think.
Oh yeah, the similarities between this and the character guide, or at least the first half of the character guide, are very clear. And it's also appreciated that you didn't also have to fit humans in again and more dwarf and elf options. This is purely the Ancestry Guide for the ancestries that don't get as much attention as the core rulebook ancestries.
Yep.
Yeah, there's some really wild stuff in here. I'm excited to just sort of dig into the book and really express some interesting new characters, some uncommon and even rare choices for ancestries. It's pretty cool.
Sins and False Alarms in chat is saying boo humans. So this sounds like the book for them.
Yes.
Boo.
Or at the very least, boo boring standard everyday humans. If you want to be a human that's, part elemental, great, go for it. This is the book for you. But vanilla humans, yeah, let's get rid of those.
So funny enough, that kind of reminds me of that meme that was going around, I guess last week, reject modernity, embrace tradition. And it was comparing a Dragonlance piece of art to, I believe it was a Critical Role piece of art. And the big difference was the ancestry representation.
Oh, you're stirring up the beehive around here.
Yeah, well, this book really represents the modernity, which I have no problem with modernity, the modernity take on the role-playing game anyway, what's in the atmosphere for what people want for their role-playing games.
Okay.
So what is it about ancestries that has really become a major component of characters that maybe wasn't so much before? Luis, you answer first this time.
I think the first big thing is mechanically Pathfinder 2nd Edition makes it so they are so much more part of what your character is. First Edition Pathfinder is very easy to pick the game's race, get your stats, get maybe a cool ability or two, an extra spell or something, and then that's it. They wouldn't ever come up again, except for in role playing, or if you chose to dive into some of the feats that we provided in like the advanced race guide and the like. But here, every few levels, you're reminded, hey, here's your ancestry. Here's more cool stuff that cements who your ancestry is and how that reflects upon your character. So having them tied so much more into the mechanics means that you get to express the ancestry so much more, learn so much more about your character. Even if you don't pick up this book, if you're looking at something like the core rule book or the APG, just seeing that, hey, this 5th level feat suggests this cool thing about dwarf culture, or this other feat suggests cool stuff about elven culture and stuff like that. It's a great expression that can inspire more role playing if you prefer that, or just give you insight into the world a bit more. And then just being able to show how these ancestries and heritages are strictly Pathfinder, our take on them. You've probably seen tieflings, you've seen orcs, you've seen catfolk, but showing how they fit in Pathfinder, specifically how they fit in Galarian, and the stories you can tell with them and what we're trying to put forth with those can also just be an exciting thing.
So it's funny, when we were reviewing the core rulebook for second edition, I speculated that we wouldn't see too many ancestries because it was so much more of an ordeal to add an ancestry to the game. But you've fully committed to that ordeal. You have put out more ancestries than you've put out classes at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're a fun mechanical space where they don't absolutely disrupt the game. So not to say classes are disrupted, but they don't have as big of a footprint, but they're still very important and can still be just as exciting for a player as a class could be. Someone might play only fighters forever, but have a lot of fun playing their orc fighter, and then their rat folk fighter, and then their cat folk fighter, and their tengu fighter, and being able to have a different type of fighter that is changed because of the ancestry it's just another fun avenue to, and another fun mechanic to play with.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, or I think last episode in chat, Aaron, who runs Paizo PR, called this year the Year of the Ancestry, which really, you got to figure, started in August with the Advanced Player's Guide, because there were a whole bunch of ancestries in that as well. Is that a goal, like to get as many of the really important cornerstone ancestries of Galarian out this year and then maybe take a break? Or what's the thought on the future of ancestries?
I think this is kind of just by chance that it happened to work out.
Yeah, kind of a confluence of things. The Lost Omens line wasn't looking at the APG necessarily, although we were working with ancestries that showed up in that book. But I don't. If there may come a point where we want to slow down on putting out the new ancestries, just so we don't wind up flooding the game with them. But I don't see us deciding to stop necessarily for any marketing or RPG reasons, so much as maybe we're putting out books where it doesn't make sense to have ancestries put in there.
Yeah, Aaron is in chat and saying he looks for patterns that might not necessarily have been intended.
So I don't know if we'll have a book with as many ancestries as the Ancestry Guide anytime soon, but when it makes sense here and there, we'll definitely like slip in some new stuff, like we're doing with the Manga Expanse book, for the next book in the line. Hey, it's a new region, let's talk about new ancestries that are there, and throw in a few, but probably not an entire book dedicated to them, if only to make sure our design team gets a break for a while.
I was going to say, it would be very difficult to have another book with this many ancestries in it. It is jam-packed and
I think it's
fantastic.
about time we start looking at this book.
Sure.
So let's start with the cover, and just the usual, gorgeous.
Yes.
All right.
It seems Katerina Burmack, who's been doing our covers since the character guide and everyone since, just can do no wrong. So this is more proof of that.
It's gorgeous.
It's lush, it's alive. I love how much the android contrasts all the life in the like in the scene and the other characters that are on the page that kind of blend in a little bit more, and it really it tells the story of the android's place in Galarian as an outsider and as a mechanical being.
Yeah, that's clearly what we were going for when we ordered this. We made sure that in the art order it says make sure there's a lot of visual metaphor implied here.
Right, yeah. You want that in the art order, certainly.
So are you suggesting I'm reading into things?
I'm suggesting
just
that you
like
have
Aaron.
a keen critical eye for art, Mr. Costello.
Never thought I did, but you know what? The Lost Omens covers have been bringing it out in me. Before we crack open the cover, are there any notes about the cover that something you were hoping to get for the cover to achieve?
It's fun to try to tell stories with the cover art and stuff. So I ordered this one in particular. I mean, we try not to be too specific and say, the lizard folk has to have one foot up on a rock and the other foot down on the ground and blah blah blah. But I asked specifically to have a lizard folk that matched the same one on the character guide cover. So it might be that exact same lizard folk. It might be someone from the same family or the same group. Who knows? We might tell that story someday. It'd be fun. But
The
picking up
lizard folk who found an android in the woods, and the Grig is gonna point them to where they got it from.
And the android is holding a map. The idea being that they're kind of an unorthodox adventuring party, but they're still going on an adventure, and maybe they're looking for a cool site or a treasure or something.
Very cool.
And just what you're saying about making sure you're reusing that lizard folk, that is how we ended up with a new iconic oracle. So you're forward thinking. You're planning ahead. All right, and then inside we've effectively got, I guess, 3 chapters if you want to count ancestral gear, 2 pages as a chapter. Because I was reading the PDF when I got to the ancestral gear, I was expecting several more pages. I didn't have a physical book to tell me it's almost over. So when I got through the 2 pages and I already got to the glossary, it was like, oh, that was sudden.
That was
abrupt. But we wanted to focus mainly on ancestries, and so every page that was, let's put in some more weapons, is taking away from, I want to play this cool person. So yeah, it's more of like a little bonus, little bonus party favor at the end than a major chapter. I think you should go into it feeling so you don't get disappointed.
Another thing, this little secret of ours is we didn't have enough space to do another ancestry, so we got to fill up 2 pages somehow. All right, we'll throw in some gear. That's what we'll do to make sure all the page counts work out.
That makes sense.
The glossary extra big.
We could have. I would be a fan of that, but I think getting in the extra gear is also really fun.
Yeah, and 2 more pages of content. It's also gear that's very flavorful compared to the ancestries that are in this book. That makes sense. So it's excellent.
So now you've decided to divide it up into expanded, which are ancestries and heritages that have been established before, and then new. So rather than being the ancestry chapter and the heritages chapter, it's new versus old. What was the thinking with that division?
I think part of it was when we were kind of planning out the layout of the book, it just worked out to be on kind of much nicer, almost middle point if we did it that way than if we did all ancestries. If you've noticed here, every ancestry gets 6 pages, all the heritages get 4 pages. So it would kind of front load all the ancestry stuff, and breaking up between the old and new makes it kind of a nice split and lets us do that mix of the 2.
Plus we were still taking cues from the character guide, where we had the core ancestry expansions and then a split, and then the new ancestries, just to keep it so where you are in the book. If you need to reference a different book to where like those front loaded, I need the APG for these because it's an expansion, or I can flip to the second half of the book and I don't need anything because everything is contained right here.
How about we flip to the second half of the book and we start with the new?
The new. Great.
Sure. Well, speaking of new, there is a question from chat that is pertinent. Dante Sparta 17 wants to know, is there a shape-shifting werewolf type ancestry?
Sure. Well, no, not exactly. Not an ancestry, but there is the remaining heritage that we have yet to talk about, which is in this new section. It's a heritage called Beastkin. If you remember, there was playable like part wolf, part werewolf, part werebear, and so on. A race in 1E that we called Skinwalkers. We took that idea and expanded it to not just be like all the typical were creatures that you're used to. We've expanded it to include the entothropes from the end of P1 and expanded even more so to dinosaurs and the like. So a beastkin is anyone that has like a partial animal transformation capacity, whether you have were creature origins or some other way to do that, but you might transform into a wolf or to a bear or to a wasp or to a T-Rex eventually. Then the beastkin is kind of this blanket term for everyone, to kind of better represent that, and move away from the old name that we feel should be better left to either the culture it comes from, or at least the monster that suggested, based on the existing real world folklore.
Cool.
So most of what this mechanical niche was in first edition was covered by the shifter, which was a class. So why is a heritage the one that's covering that ground, at least first in second edition?
Well, we wanted to do something like what we had in first edition, and we were trying to see, hey, what can we do to represent that, and maybe possibly even allow you to play a playable like werewolf or werebear or whatever. And we kind of landed on this almost middle ground. You can be something that's akin to a werewolf without having to worry about full moons or getting attacked by silver or anything. But the ancestry itself is not giving you so many abilities that it would invalidate something like a shifter. If we were to try to bring that over to second edition, it would complement it really well, and it kind of gets you halfway there to, if you wanted to live that fantasy with your characters. But it's kind of there to just be a big catch-all for if you want to be a cat girl but not be a cat folk, right? If you want to be a kind of werewolf-like creature without being an actual werewolf, or if you want to go really wild and be, part centipede or something. The mechanics of it, once we get to it, kind of cover basically every potential case as best as it can. Considering there's so many animals out there that we could cover, it would be really tough to kind of make the heritage cover, like, okay, take this feat to be a werewolf, this one to be a werebear, and that would fill up things so quickly. So kind of expanding that to the way it is now lets us cover as many fantasy ideas as we can with it.
And they are still tied to lycanthropy. From the mini description, it's talking about how they're more like a werewolf's kid who doesn't have the curse but still has some of the abilities.
Yeah, so some of the background is you might be someone that was afflicted with lycanthropy, but I guess curse of the were creature, as they call it in Dewey. But maybe just don't have the negative effects. You might have a lineage tied back to were creatures, or we also offer a few other alternatives. You might have been given the blessing of like a nature spirit that allows you to transform, or you might be an animal that somehow has learned to transform into a human, or to a dwarf or something, and it's coming from the other side, just to cover as many possible ideas as you want for your potential characters.
Very cool.
Going through some of the chat questions. I actually don't see many questions specifically about the beastkin, but chat is alive tonight, and so
they're excited.
Wow, there's a lot of people.
There's a lot of people. They are commenting. They have questions. They have opinions, and they seem to mostly be in a good mood.
You sound shocked.
I'm just reassuring you that they are here, they are talking, and they are happy.
They are.
We're glad to have them all here.
Well, they wanted to know if it's rare or uncommon.
Oh, yes. So actually, on the topic of
rarity,
thank you. I was thinking commonality, and that's the opposite. Yes, on the topic of rarity, I have learned about the rarity rules from you, Luis, in private discussions, because I was confused about them at first. And you've assured me that it is more, the place and availability in the setting rather than a balancing factor. But a lot of the ancestries here have much more magical, powerful abilities. Is rarity still purely being used for from a lore point of view?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We had Mark Seifter, who was our design lead, look over each of these ancestries and give them all a thorough pass. So in theory, I mean, assuming we've all done our jobs right, you can play the rare ancestries and rare heritages here alongside your humans and your elves and not worry about, in terms of like mechanical balance, anything being off. in terms of maybe like the cool, amazing stuff you can do, like, oh, I can transform it into a bear or whatever, but my everyday common elf can't do that, pout pout, sure. But the
But my
mechanics,
dumb human can't see in the dark or anything.
in terms of that, the flavor is obviously rare and exciting, but all the mechanics should still be such that you can play a table of whatever mix you want of these ancestries and still be good.
And they're pretty open-ended too. Like some few people on chat, several people were asking about the different senses. Do you get dark vision, low light? And there's a first level feat that's just animal senses that you get one of those things. So you can get dark vision or low light or even imprecise scent if that's what you want, which is pretty cool. So you can sort of staple these things on top of your character to replicate whatever animal it is you're going for. So if I wanted to be a real life cat girl, I could choose like this ancestry and get dark vision and see in the dark, and that's pretty cool.
I thought I had just gotten a hold of all the chat questions, and then I went back,
Oh, no.
and there were so many questions. A lot of them were pertaining to this. So, are there swimming and flying options for Beastkin?
Yeah,
That is
there's
from Hilly34431.
we can definitely answer some more Beastkin stuff, but I definitely want to talk about all the stuff in this book. But yeah, the
just Beastkin.
Okay, fine. Just the
no!
Beastkin. No, as Vanessa was saying, there's an animal senses feat that you can take as many times as you want to replicate as many feats or many senses as you need. So if you are your animal, we call your inherent animal that you're tied to, can see in the dark and can also sniff things out, then you can take the feat a few times to get your scent and your dark vision. And later there's a feat that lets you get the speeds that your inherent animal could have. So if you are an eaglekin, you can eventually learn to fly.
What?
And just do that at all times. Or if you are a molekin, you can get a burrow speed, I think.
Oh my gosh.
I don't want to lie.
Could you imagine
here.
a cute little mole
check.
and those like big paws?
No, my mistake. It's just climb speed, fly speed, or swim speed. So
Dang it, Luis.
No burrowing. But
you're ruining my immersion.
I'm sure your GM could add that if need be. But it could be, a monkeykin and climb very well, or a sealkin and swim around and stuff.
Jaina wants to know if she could play Batman.
Yes, you can be a batkin. And depending on if you're a sprite, you might also be a bat influenced sprite.
That's kind of fun.
That would sort of be a man bat, don't you think?
It would be like Batman bat. Batman. You just take the word bat and man a couple of times, throw it in the blender, and you get what you
get. You get something, that's for sure.
Man, Batman.
Can I just tell you how excited I am about the sprite ancestry? It's a rare one, but oh my gosh, I want to play a sprite now.
Well, you just have to knuckle down on your GM until you get it. That's how it works.
Honestly, I might have to. It's amazing. They're super tiny, and one of the first level feats you can get is a corgi mount.
Of course, yeah. If you look up corgis in the real world, they actually have a breed standard called the fairy saddle, which is that furry patch right on their back, because they were traditionally said to be the mounts of fairies. So, when
cute.
Mark Seifter wrote the sprite, the first thing he did was, you have to have that corgi mount, or it's just not going to be accurate. It's going to ruin your vermicitude.
Oh my gosh. Hilly34... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, Hilly34431 said, Cavalier Giant Barbarian Sprite.
Oh yeah, people are definitely having fun with their just theory crafting the different ancestries, and Sprite is a popular one.
Mm-hmm.
People have definitely talked about the tiny Sprite going from tiny to large in an action. Just
So there is a section in the book that does talk about some of the challenges of all these flying ancestries that you've added, the different sizes. Was there ever any fear about including options that break the norm of what an ancestry can do?
I mean, we built them as ancestries that would be balanced in Pathfinder 2nd edition, just without any sort of fudging in theory. I'm sure somebody will come out with a spreadsheet and 5 magic items and some class feats and break the game, because that's, I think, fun for a lot of people. But we weren't too worried about breaking it because we were going in on the base assumption that here's the ancestry in a way that we feel will work with the game rules we've presented, and then we provided the options for. But we understand that, if you're playing a Strix or a Sprite, you might want to just fly from first levels. Maybe your character concept is built around that. And we have like the base assumptions in the flavor text for why your wings aren't necessarily letting you fly at first level, but some people would want to play a different character concept that doesn't match that lore we provided. So we figure, if your GM allows that, that's your on your GM. That's your GM's prerogative, and they're just gonna have to deal with it. And we warned them. We warned them, and that's what we've done.
On the topic of flying, Hilly34431, I'm just going to say Hilly from now on, Hilly. Hilly wants to know, is it possible to add optional fly at level 1 to other ancestries that maybe could use some flying options?
I mean, in theory, you can just give that to anyone. The guidelines that we have say find ancestries where it makes sense that they have wings, like the Sprite or the Strix. And if you want to give them level 1, here's our guidance. Maybe give them a slower fly speed than your base speed. So if you can run it, if you're an elf that runs 30 feet, maybe you wouldn't get that as well. So it could be applied to anyone. It might not make as much sense why suddenly dwarves are flying when they don't have any wings. But in theory, you can do that and apply that to any ancestry in the game, and it just would lack the ancestral feat support to give you cool things like the Strix has, attacks they can do with their wings, or the Sprites can have glowing wings that you can use in combat as well. So like, it's in theory all potentially there. You just might not have as many cool toys to play with.
As busy as our chat is, I just saw Jaina B posted in the No Direction Discord a picture of a mole man ninja.
Oh wow!
There you go. It's now possible. You can do it.
So we've brought up the Strix a couple of times, and Wozenstein in chat is saying that they have a player who is extremely attached to Strix. Let's talk about the Strix.
Strix, great.
There they are.
About the Strix.
There they are.
They are. They are very much a Pathfinder ancestry. The name comes from Greek origin, but beyond that, it's all Pathfinder. And we wanted to use the Ancestry Guide as a place to showcase a lot of Pathfinder specific stuff. That's why we have the flavor that we do of the existing ancestries, and bringing on the Strix was kind of a no-brainer for us. And that we wanted them to be able to do lots of cool stuff with flight. So they're the ones that can kind of get into regular flight the earliest of any ancestries, even earlier, I think, than the Sprites. So once you hit 5th level, you'll probably be able to fly around regularly in combat if you decide to build into that way. Otherwise, the themes of the not defending other Strix and protecting yourself from dangerous outsiders is here, and just lots of cool information about where you can find Strix. They are particularly rare, not just because they can fly, but they're rare because in the setting they only really hang out in Cheliax and maybe a little beyond there, considering that the supposed origins are that they're from Arcadia. But yeah, they're here, they're exciting, and I think people are gonna enjoy both the flavor and, of course, being able to fly around.
Of course.
And remind me, were the Strix? I know they were in 1st edition. They've been in the world for a while, but were they a playable option before 2nd edition?
Yeah, they were.
Okay. Well, they're way more playable now.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of support for them, to the point where I could imagine it would be easier for a GM to want to let them into a game despite their rare ancestry, just because you have enough supporting material to work with now. So yeah, they're super cool.
I like Feather Cloak. or feathered cloak, where you just pretend you are wearing a fancy jacket made out of feathers and that you
Oh.
are not a flying creature.
Yep.
Mhm.
It gives you a bonus to convince people you're just a non-Strix.
You know that adventurers wear way more flamboyant things all the time.
All the
You
time.
will not stand out.
Hmm.
All right, let's go back to the top of the alphabetical order and
Sure.
talk about the android. We've got a couple of people asking some questions about the android. I've got one handy, and then I'll try and pick out the other ones. What are the heritages did the android get? That's from Blue Cruise.
The idea with the heritages was that androids were created to replicate people, and a lot of the time androids were designed with specific jobs or tasks in mind. So the heritages represent these different I guess builds of androids. So you might be an artisan android who was designed to create art or maintain like stuff with your tools and stuff. And there's an impersonator and a laborer android, and the polyglot android who is kind of a translator or a diplomat, and the warrior android. So those are the 5 android heritages, and depending on what you think your character was originally built for, whether or not they continue to do that is a different case. But that's what you kind of pick to determine the cool stuff you get at the character creation.
We have not talked about the art yet, but I think the android section is a good place to bring up that I really like the art direction for the ancestries, in that there's usually 4 or 5 figures per chapter or per section, and there's at least one of them that is pretty much what you were expecting, and there's at least one of them that is not at all what you're expecting. So we've got a barbarian looking android towards the end of the section, and I like that the first android in there, she's got some kind of dreadlock looking hairstyle, but there's a techno-organic feel to it. It doesn't feel like a human's dreadlocks. Sorry. So yeah, just talking about the art, like how was that intentional, or am I reading into it again?
You ordered it for the androids, Luis.
But I mean, I think we did this with all of the heritages and ancestries. We tried our best to cover, if it was a new ancestry, have an art piece for every heritage that we list, or at least every ethnicity that we've listed. So androids case, there's the androphin androids, which are your kind of basic everyday androids that you're used to, and then we have the sovereign androids, which are the ones that kind of joined up with local Numerian culture and now are hanging out with the barbarians, and that's the one you're talking about there as well. But yeah, trying to just show off how varied a given ancestry or heritage can be, and sometimes give you really, really weird stuff, like the chasm android who has like arms that bend the wrong way and stuff, and they're really long and skinny because they live in the dark lands and they have to crawl through small gaps and reach through weird areas of the dark lands, and kind of quote unquote have evolved to live in the dark lands. So yeah, artwork I think tries to represent all the different possibilities that the mechanics and the flavor are offering in the pages.
There was a whole section of the chat where people were joking about Dhampir androids, Dhampir automatons when they come out, and there is no restriction on adding heritages to the android ancestry. So
Correct.
what's going on there?
I mean, if you can come up with a backstory for it, we don't want to limit you, and I can come up with a backstory for it too. It's just your robot, like maybe there was a flaw in your biologicals, and for some reason you've just learned how to siphon other people's vital fluids into your android system and circulate it around to replace your own. And there's no reason why your android couldn't, modify their body to have fangs. Um, so if same with like an Efreet android, like maybe your machinery can pump lava through it because your android was supposed to work in the volcano. I don't know. If you can convince your GM that it works, I don't see why we should put some arbitrary limits on it just because we weren't creative enough.
Hilly mentioned
of the android that thinks they're just malfunctioning because they're constantly on fire, but it ends up no, they're just connected to the fire plane.
Connected to the fire plane.
Yeah,
Oops.
I mean,
overheating. Oh wait, that always happens.
even in Starfinder, you have magic and other planes coexisting with technology, and like the sun in Starfinder is just a big portal to the positive energy plane. So why not? Why not have your android accidentally malfunction and open up a portal to like a tiny little portal to the elemental plane of fire? It's just spewing magma everywhere, and you had to install a valve or something.
I am never going to be able to keep up with chat. There's just so much. And
There's
if I
so
just
much.
follow chat's stream of consciousness,
I
we are going
know.
to be jumping all over the place, which you two have managed to follow whatever thread I'm weaving here, following chat's whims, but I don't want to push your limits.
Well, Hilly had mentioned combining androids and beastkin for catgirl.exe.
Yes.
Well, that's just what was the name of the Beast Wars? That's
Yeah.
just
Okay.
Beast Wars.
Transformers.
Yeah, exactly. I just did I can have circuits, but I don't know.
You know, Param and I were just talking about how all of my Starfinder character concepts are androids, and yet I wasn't super excited about the android ancestry. But once you bring in Beast Wars, it's like, oh, wait a second. Oh, there is a lot there.
Hmm. All right. Well, I know folks are clamoring for Kitsune, but should we put that on hold and continue traveling alphabetically?
Yeah, let's be very mean. It's fun to do that.
Okay, good.
sometimes.
All right.
I've been nothing but mean and teasing people for the last however many months since we've announced this book. So
You're a monster.
And he's
It's
not
true.
sick of it.
I am not sick of it. It's,
Well, I do want to lump the next one in with I feel like there's a companion ancestry or
Yeah.
heritage. So it's the Aphorite, which is the super lawful heritage,
Mhm.
and then there's the Ganzi, which is the super chaotic one. And I love the description that they are born wherever and whenever you're least expecting it.
Oh, the Gonzi?
Just Ganzi showed up. The Ganzi baby just fell out of the church bell or something. I don't know. I don't understand that sentence, but I love it.
But you told me that stork was just made up.
And your mistake was believing that.
Oh my gosh, the Gonzi.
Yeah, you get to play with a lot of alignment. Like we've seen the other planes, the elemental planes, play into ancestries, and it usually, you know, it follows a lot of traditions of different tropes, but alignment based is very much more gamified, and yet you've really tied them into the lore and the cosmology of the setting. So where do these two heritages come from, and how did you go about designing them?
Well, they were actually something that snuck in, I guess, as the doors were closing on first edition. The Ganzi originated in, I think, like the racial sets originated in
Mhm.
planar adventures, and as did the Aphorite. I'm not exactly sure.
I think so,
Yeah, and they had like a chance to show up in one player companion, and then the second edition kind of, blew all that away. But we knew that it made perfect sense. We have celestial heritage in the form of Asimars and the fiendish heritage in the form of tieflings. So let's cover. Okay, we have good, evil. Let's cover law and chaos, and bringing them here made a lot of sense. And they didn't have as much of a storied history as Asimars and Tieflings do, not just in our game, but the history of the game. But that meant it also was kind of primed to kind of flesh them out to however we needed them to be. We took the few nuggets of ideas that we had in first edition and kind of ran with them here, and set them into the world in a way that we think kind of makes sense for something that is strict order. You must have this one baby, and this baby will have their powerful gold skin and cool math abilities, or just the stork dropping the church bell baby off, and we'll see if we get a chance to expand on them and give them as robust a feeling in place in the setting as we get to do with, or as we have done with Asimars and the Geniekin and the Tieflings in the years to come.
I also like that it opens up the possibility that you're effectively taking alignment based feats. So if you just kind of want to ignore the heritage part of it and just be like, I am such a purely lawful character, like a champion that can really emphasize the law, they can just sneak in and use some of their ancestry feats to gain effectively alignment feats, which is not a category that exists.
Yeah, I think getting to lean into that however you want is also one of the goals of this book. Is, you know, like I mentioned with the Beastkin, we gave it 4 different origins. We do so kind of give as many origins and possibilities for character potential and background potential as we can with every heritage and ancestry. So you can kind of lean into it with as little or as much as you want of the existing flavor.
Yeah, if you, we don't again want to police your character choices. If you see mechanics that you're like, oh, that's going to work great for my character, we're not going to lock you into, well, you have to have come. Well, I'm sure that the Afrites will want you to be locked into. You have one origin and you will stick with it. But the game doesn't work like that. You can pop up as any weird thingamabobber that doesn't make necessarily any sense whatsoever because you're the adventurer, and adventurers are special. And as long as your fellow players are good with it, you can just roll with what you want.
Healy is suggesting a Gansey champion of Abadar, and that mix of words excites me.
Yep, there you go.
I'm immediately thinking of character concepts just reading it. Like, there's some interesting story to be told there. Like, why Abadar? Why did you choose that? Maybe to fight against your own chaotic nature. It caused you some pain in the past or some tragedy, and you're like, no, I need to be good. I need to get this under control.
Or maybe it's because that's where you least expect a Gansey to show up.
Perhaps. They do show up in the most unexpected places.
Wherever and whenever.
Wherever and whenever.
But always babies.
Always, yes, sure.
All right, next up, we've got the Fetchling. Fetchling are the Shadow Plane castaways. Is that a fair summary?
I think they were more
refugees.
Here on
yeah.
Absalom Isle.
They were safeguarded by escaping Earthfall and running away to the Shadow Plane to avoid that whole, you know, world-ending calamity.
All right, so what was it about the Fetchling that made them make the cut for the Ancestry Guide?
It's another one of those. Well, people call them the Fetchling itself came from D&D, but the sort of Kaal that we expanded on was very Pathfinder focused, I think, and we've done a lot with them, but I think not really presented it up in center anytime that like in a high profile product. So I think a lot of people don't know all that much about them. Like I mean, until I got the turnover, I didn't know that fetchlings lived on a chain of island that went up to the shadow moon. That sounds rad. So this was a good spot to showcase them as you know, their own people, their own culture, without getting super focused on Nidal or other nations where they'd sort of get buried underneath all the creepy Kuthanite humans that are running the place.
There's a super intriguing piece of art on page 85 with the candle being snuffed by a shadow. I really have no follow-up to that. It's just, boy, that's different from the other art in this book.
It's so cool.
Yeah, every ancestry, I think all the new ancestries have like an extra little piece that isn't just one of these people to kind of show some of the stuff that's tied to them. And I think that's represented by a feat that you can use to have your shadow go out and interact with stuff, open doors or snuff candles and stuff if need be, much the way that like a tiefling's tail could kind of go do stuff on its own. So just showing that feat in action is kind of a fun little thing we got to add.
Oh yeah, 5th level, Clever Shadow. That's fun. Who wouldn't want that? That's so cool.
Yeah, the person who wrote this really focused on the Kaal shadows, which was a really fun trick, and like all the specific ethnicities have something that's specifically different from their shadow than you'd expect. Like I think one of them has like they cast a shadow, but that shadow seems to be like missing chunks every once in a while, and like a almost like a static sort of thing. It's really strange. And others, I think their shadow like points a different way from the sun than you'd expect them to. It's very interesting.
Sins and False Alarm says, please hold on, my shadow is buffering.
Yeah, I'm sure people who have seen Peter Pan can get into all sorts of
Mhm.
mischief with their dumb shadow causing problems while they're not looking.
Indeed.
Next up, we have one of the rare ancestries, the Flesh Warp.
Oh my gosh. These things are.
This is an ancestry that stands out.
Yes.
What's it doing in here?
Well,
Yeah, being creepy.
being creepy and weird and kind of covering a lot of bases for us. So when we were first getting the ideas for what ancestries we can put in this book, um, part of the original meetings was kind of asking everyone new ideas for ancestries, or taking existing content from first edition and saying, could this be its own ancestry? And we landed on a lot of different things, like mutants from the mana wastes, and kind of like the the potential of a playable flesh warp, and stuff like that, or a playable undead, and things like that. And we realized that it might be hard to, I guess, get a whole ancestry behind those ideas, but when you kind of put them all together as people that have been transformed by serious events in their life, and kind of put that all under the blanket of the flesh warp here, it leads to a very interesting ancestry, a very monstrous ancestry, not necessarily evil ancestry, but one that has looks that are not at all what you're used to. So you might have more mouths than you typically are used to people seeing, having,
Mhm.
and the like. And it was kind of a really fun, um almost kind of a really fun problem that we wanted to solve. And it's like, well, if we have all these, can we put them all together into something that is kind of a cohesive idea, which is what we ended up here with the flesh warp being. Just, if you've been transformed, here you are, here's how you can play that. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't know what the heck like a cyborg might be. So they might just call you a flesh warp, because that's kind of the catch-all monster term that people use. Oh, someone that looks gross and scary, you must be a flesh warp. And
Mhm.
now that can kind of cover that, as for any potential idea there.
So I have homework for someone, a listener, whoever wants to do this. Make a list of 100 body parts, and
Oh,
then roll 2d100 when you're doing your flesh warp, and complete the sentence. There are blanks where blanks should be.
that is amazing and
Yeah,
horrible, and I love
there
it.
are toenails where eyelids should be. There is mouths where mouths shouldn't be. There we go. If you roll the same thing twice, then make it a negative sentence. So as a GM, one of my favorite themes is like magical pollution, like the residual effect of using magic and breaking the laws of physics all the time. I've never got to play with that as a player. So Flesh Warp is actually high on my list of ancestries I might check out next.
What?
Yeah,
I know.
there was definitely, as we made this, it was clear that there was like a huge niche of things you could not be as a player that this would allow you to be as a player. We've got sort of the constructed flesh golem experiment sort of thing, the just plain warped by magic or warped by technology, or all sorts of stuff like that. Or you could just be some kind of horrible nightmare creature like the Corinthian from Sandman and have eyes where your mouth or mouths where your eyes
Yeah.
should be.
Classic.
Ugh. Classic.
Just no explanation whatsoever. um, but yeah, you could either be, you don't even have to be like somebody who was victimized by this stuff. You could have been just grown in a vat in some alchemist's lab, and your little your little goop buddy who's gonna go out and see the world and
Mm.
super innocent.
Lava Being
Characters
suggests you
turn
could have
into
done it to yourself, maybe, to try and
That's
like
true.
Yeah,
obviously
gain
there.
doing
I
additional
all the
mean,
powers.
leftover body parts on a battlefield, just some of them mixed together and get up and walk away.
Sure. That's great.
yes,
Mhm.
But
you can.
I,
We've specified that you could come from anywhere because you're rare as an ancestry, and you just, nobody knows where one of you might spring up.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Ability boost constitution and free. That means I could make my flesh warped inventor that I'm slowly formulating in my head.
yeah. I'm excited to see that.
Very cool.
Did they invent themselves to become an inventor?
Oh, maybe.
Mm,
Like, just because you're an inventor doesn't mean you're dealing with metal.
it's true.
Upgrade. Eyeball.
I
Throat.
I couldn't find it, but someone in chat had asked because there was in one of the stories a gnome flesh warp. Could you play a medium or a small? And it's just medium listed, but there's no reason you couldn't be small, right?
Yeah, I don't see any reason why you couldn't be small. In fact, I think the more we learn about ancestries and how they're balanced and how they work with the game, I think you might start seeing more options that give you the choice between medium or small or something in the future. Who knows? It just seems like another lever we can play with as we go on.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
All right, I'm thinking too many things about different flesh warps.
Well,
I was just thinking of reskinning the pixie as a flesh warp and just having it like a flying knee that's just flapping its chunks of legs and somehow propelling. Anyway, are you sure you're excited to hear more about my flesh warp character?
no, I'm not.
All right,
Okay,
we already talked
fine.
about the Ganzi, so that brings us to a big chunk of fan favorites: the Geniekin, the
Yes.
Ifrit, the Oread, the Suli, the Sylph, and the Undine. I'm kind of surprised these weren't in a book before now.
Honestly, yes.
I feel like when we got the surveys back, they were basically just below the cut that made it to the APG. Or something like that.
I think space may have also played a big factor there
that's true.
because there are 5 of them, as opposed to
Mhm.
any other just one-off ancestry. And if you include one and not the other 4, you are going to get so many angry people in your mentions.
You can get away with this cutting the Sylph because the Sylph is kind of like the Omni Geniekin.
The Suli, yeah.
Suli, sorry, yeah, I got mixed up.
The Suli.
Yeah, but even
cutting
still,
the Sylph would be weird.
Even still, not having the complete set would bug me.
Okay.
You want your full house when you're talking about Geniekin.
You want one book that you can open up and have them all there.
Yeah, that also is another thing. Playing it into it, just how easy it is to like keep them all together. It's a big factor.
So I mean, even though they're super popular, I also think they're pretty self-explanatory. People know these ancestries and heritages better than more of the things in the book, so I don't have a whole lot to say about them. Cool art as usual.
Yep.
Yeah, I like the way, because their heritages, like there's Ifrit has a cat folk. It's just so cool. It's like, oh, that's a different. Wouldn't your fur burn off? Although I guess not, because it's part of who you are. It's really neat.
Yeah, I think another big part of what we wanted to do with the art for the heritage is occasionally show you it's not all just humans that get this benefit. So we have, I think, a dwarven Suli there, and we had a Cobalt Aphite and things like that.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, we've also it's another one of the thing that crept in at the very end, like the very, very end of Pathfinder First Edition, was the lineages on the Geniekin. Because I mean the tieflings and the Asimar had them, like you were related to a this specific celestial or this specific kind of demon, and that lets you take a lineage that sort of shows that mechanically. The Geniekin also gained those at the very end of first edition, and we ported them into second edition. So if you're in a free, you can be a magma soul and focus more on lava as opposed to just plain fire. Or those 2 sylphs on the page you're showing. That's the fume soul and the smoke soul, I think. For just one of them's just like bad poisonous air, and the smoke soul is just like smoke, but they've got like ashy sorts of and concealment sorts of things that you'd associate with that sort of aspect of the element.
Yeah, I think that's really neat and very very inspiring. So you're looking and being like, I guess I'm gonna be an air person. It's like, well, like a lightning storm air person or like a refreshing breeze air person. Like, what kind of air person? And you're like, oh yeah, there's a lot of different ways to go for that. So I think that's a great inspiration for folks.
It's also cool that the mechanics are so different from the first edition version, because I feel like these were characters that we saw a lot of, especially in Pathfinder Society, because for a while they were just anyone can take them option, and they were anyway. You saw a lot of Genie Kid in Pathfinder Society, but using the heritage rules and making it now a component of another ancestry means that you can play familiar territory in a completely new way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much all the versatile heritages have really popped up
Mm-hmm.
in Pathfinder Second Edition because you can put them on anything, and of course, everybody bursts in with, "Well, can I put this on my Leshy?" As well, why not? Why can't you have a celestial Leshy? Why couldn't you have like a radish that was grown up in heaven or Nirvana? There's no reason why that can't be a character, or a changeling leshy. I think somebody suggested that's where your leshy was grown, where hags just dump out their magical cauldrons. It's like, we're done with this boiled
Oh yeah.
newt, so just dump that out in the backyard. Okay, now you've got a magical changeling leshy. That this is why you dispose of your stuff properly.
Yeah, in the town water supply like a good hag.
Now I'm thinking of an Oriad Beastkin and making a rock lobster.
Can't do that.
How dare you?
No, because they're both heritages.
Oh,
I
good.
know.
Thank you.
You have to be the beastkin's fire sorcerer. Uh,
Oh.
there are ways to get around. There are ways to get around the
Or if your
limitation.
GM lets you have two versatile heritages, and go for it.
That's true. Could be kind of cool.
Yeah, I don't think it'll break the game because you only have so many Ancestry feat slots. So if you just want to keep
I just wouldn't have the basics of what my character is.
badgering your GM to put more and more versatile heritage on your character, I don't think you're gonna. I don't think you're actually gonna break the game with that. Probably.
Mm.
All right, I'll compromise and just put it on a human.
Boring. No.
That's
put it on a flesh warp.
It's a human rock lobster. Is that still boring to you?
No, put it on a flesh warp.
Oh, there we go.
That's true.
You know what? I
That's
can
true.
just skip everything and just go with flesh warp again.
Oh gosh. Whoa. So
Next up, we've got. Go ahead, V.
I was gonna say, yeah, next up we have Kitsune, which I know people in chat aren't really interested in. So should we just skip over it and go to Sprite? Is that
Why are you causing fights?
Hey, you know what? I'm here tonight, and that means there's a little extra chaos in the show. Okay.
A Ganzi.
All right. Well, we'll do the Kitsune. I accidentally spoiled a brief few seconds of preview of the art, but let's take a look. We start right off the bat with this beautiful fox and all those beautiful tails.
Yes.
Yep.
The Kitsune turned out very well, very great. Thanks to James Case, who wrote this, and who probably is.
Thanks to quarantine, he wasn't able to go to some kind of giant Kitsune temple like he did with the Tengu temple with Tengu, but he did a great job anyway.
Mm-hmm.
James wrote the Tengu for APG and happened to be in Japan and be able to visit like local shrines and stuff to get more inspiration.
That's super cool.
But not the case for Kitsune, unfortunately. But even still, him, and then I know Eleanor has a lot of is an expert on a lot of the subject matter and mythology, then help flesh this out and get this amazing art for it's just some ancestry no one's ever heard of, whatever.
So it might be because the network and its members have skewed my perception, but this is another ancestry that I expected to have seen before now. This comes off to me as a very popular ancestry. Again, it could be because half of the network is obsessed with them.
Yeah, something Dustin in chat.
There's the so I guess going back to character guide, when we were first putting that book together, when we were deciding what ancestries to put in, there was a lot of information that we had gotten from the playtest surveys that asked, what ancestries do you want to see, what races from 1A do you want to see, and pretty much that top the top of that list ended up in the APG. We grabbed a few other ones that we knew were more Galarian focused and more a chance to show off the cool Galarian stuff that we have going on. But because we were kind of dedicated to core inner sea stuff, we didn't go beyond to like, hey, Kitsune is popular, but they're Tian Xiao, we maybe will wait on that. But then when the Ancestry guide was getting put together, it's like, well, you know what? There's no borders here. Let's just grab whatever we can and throw in. And of course, that includes Kitsune. And I know a lot of people have been waiting for it, and I hope people are excited to get a chance to play with what I think is a brilliant expansion on the flavor and the mechanics that we had in first edition. Now, not only do you transform from your kind of humanoid fox form to a human form, depending on your heritage, you might transform into just an actual fox and be a cute little fox person instead. And that's just cool stuff that's inspired by the mythology and really grabbing the existing folklore out there to make cool stuff and cool options.
Now, I might be channeling V when I ask this question, but with the Beastkin in this book, why bother with Kitsune?
Because the Beastkin don't grow additional tails or let you do cool enchantment magic.
They're a feet away from doing that.
Well, also Kitsune are just so they're so iconic, not just in sort of Eastern mythology, but also in Galarian's own lore. They're just really steeped into all the things going on in Tiansha, and so it makes sense that you would have a specific call out just for the Kitsune.
And if they're very specific magical creatures, they're not just a fox person. They have like specific magical powers that are attributed to them. In some cases, they are heavenly messengers that, like, Daikitsu or the other gods in Tiansha will just send down to go tell you stuff or go handle holy stuff down, on Galarian. And because of the sort of like, they would not fit into the Beastkin because they would have a suite of mythological powers that don't really match the whole I'm an animal person thing, because they like it wouldn't make we could put that stuff into the Beastkin, but it's like, okay, I have a magical star orb that is my familiar, and I can use it to cast like deadly spells or whatever. That doesn't make sense for a werewolf. And then we just be like, well, you can only take this if you're a fox person, and then it just turns into like a very messy it's there's more to it than they're just being an animal creature, and that's why they're separate.
And also keeping them separate means that you, in theory, could play a Beastkin Kitsune and, I don't know, somehow be like
so much fox,
a double fox or a praying mantis fox or something. Who knows?
That's true. That's pretty cool. All right, you have me thinking now.
I mean, that's one way to cheat, because the Kitsune does have, some of them have a humanoid form and a fox-headed person form, and some of them have the fox-headed person form and a fox form, and you can take a feat to get the form that you're missing, or you could just put your beastkin on it, and then you can be a fox with beastkin and not bother.
Does one have a better animal form than the other?
Not really, no.
I think eventually the Beastkin's animal form is potentially better at fighting, because they get like specific callouts about like, oh, your AC is actually different from what the spell that transforms you is, and all this stuff. So I'm sure someone will go and do a breakdown and figure out like, okay, if you want to fight as a giant T-Rex, the best way to do it is this, and then be a druid, and then blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
so
very cool.
That wraps up the new ancestries and heritages, since we already covered the Strix and the Sprite. We've got another half hour or so. Is there anything about the adventuring gear you want? The ancestral gear you want to go over?
It's new weapons. Part of that was trying to flesh out some gaps for ancestries that didn't have that many weapons yet. So I saw that. I wrote this section, so I saw that the catfolk had just one ancestral weapon, so I gave them the whip claws and thing. And we were also using it as a space to tease weapons for the upcoming ancestries in the Mwangi Expand, so that's why there's Gripply weapons here, and the Kunrasu weapons. It was a chance to come up with new weapons and do a few fun things to flesh out the ancestries and heritage just a bit more, knowing that the Geniekin develop special knives that transmit their energy damage through them is kind of a cool little thing that I think adds more to the Geniekin and the setting as a whole.
So we've got about half an hour left in what you've committed to, and we haven't really talked about the expanded ancestries and heritages, but we also have a ton of stuff from chat. Chat has been patient and active, and so I think I would rather go through what chat wants to know rather than go over the expanded ancestries and heritages, if everyone's okay with that.
Sure.
I'm fine with it. Yep.
All right. Some of these might be redundant because I tried my best to curate the questions, but there were so many questions.
There's so many questions.
All right. And I'm even going to skip who's asking them just because that takes a lot of time, and some names are just unpronounceable. So, chances of an archetype that gives more ancestry feats.
Sure.
We already sort of have the optional rule for the ancestral paragon.
Yeah, the
if you wanna
GMG
Right.
go
has a
down that
thing.
route.
And then you can also take a general feat to get an extra feat to get another ancestral. I think you can somehow double up on that, or am I wrong?
I think there's a general feat that eventually, like at a higher level, gets you like a first level ancestry feat or something. So
Like another one, yeah.
yeah,
There's a
but
couple
yeah, the
ways.
GMG variant rule is probably the best way to go to give you a lot of feats.
It's funny, somebody in the chat even suggested Ancestral Paragon as the name for that, and I guess forgetting or not realizing that is actually the rule that already exists. Someone's asking for a ghost heritage.
That would be cool.
All right.
That's all I can say about that. I don't know. We don't have any plans in the future, but.
All right. Does the Ancestry Guide expand into covering ancestries from any locations of the Lost Omens setting for which we have had little material prior?
Yes, a little bit.
I feel like I want to respond define, but the way the chat's going, that's not going to work.
The ethnicities and information on the cultures of the different entries here will sometimes cover, like, we talk about Kitsune and their place in Tiansha as well as their place in the Inner Sea. So there are bits here and there. You're not going to be able to suss out entire nations based on the one paragraph of the orcs in the Mwangi Expanse or anything like that. But yeah, there's a little bit that hopefully we can use to expand in the future.
Glurs wants a half dwarf, half elf.
You can do that.
The half elf ancestry on a dwarf.
Yes,
we can't stop you.
We released a cool product called the Core Rulebook that lets you do that.
Fantastic.
All right. Someone's asking about the Lost Omens food guide.
We
please.
wish.
Yes.
We wish.
Okay, I know it's in Bestiary 3 currently, but I'm already excited about the idea of the Setheno ancestry.
Oh, the Steno, yes.
Steno.
So what that is
too, but that did not come out in time for this book.
Yeah. In short, Mark Seifter created what's basically a species of like Medusa like people that if people like it and enough clamor happens, we can try to find a spot to make them a playable ancestry.
Very cool.
All right, someone else mentioning food. They were wondering if it's going to be in the Grand Bazaar.
Yes.
Some?
Speaking of, there's food in the Grand Bazaar?
Well, of course, and you can buy anything at the Grand Bazaar.
Oh, well, that's kind of a cop out of an answer.
No, but I mean, there's mechanical food options.
Like robot food?
Like robot food?
Robot food. No.
Axiomite food? Is that what you're trying to give us? Come on.
It would be too powerful to give food and program it to feed you to itself to you.
All right, somebody wants oozes as a playable ancestry.
Me too.
All right.
Go to the Slithering, pick up the Oozemorph archetype, and have fun being a ball of goo.
Yes.
Ooh.
Nachi Talk is just a big fan of the Lost Omens line.
Oh, thank
Thank
you.
I want you to know.
Me
All right,
too.
talk
Same.
about centaurs. Some people are asking about if pants for centaurs will be in the Grand Bazaar, but others are looking for centaurs as a playable option.
It depends. Our pants. How do you wear the pants as this? Anyway,
In this family, I don't know.
I think like now that we've done like flying ancestries and weird other stuff that we have here, maybe the new frontier is large ancestries. That's not my call to make at the moment, but like I think it's a very real possibility. The ancestry system is pretty robust and could cover a lot of options.
All right.
Definitely, we know that a lot of people want the Minotaurs and the Centaurs.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
again, that's not our call to make, but we're
Keep
aware.
ringing that bell, and hopefully eventually someone can capitalize on it.
Somebody would like you to bring back the Rogaris?
Rougarous.
Rougarous.
Rougarous are like wolf people, much like cat folk are cat
Mhm.
people. There's a lot of them that live in Arcadia, so that would be fun because I like Arcadia stuff.
You don't say.
It's a little industry secret that I'm into Arcadia.
People were wondering if the Beastkin can become shark folk.
Yes.
Nice.
Here, let me read the little thing on the Beastkin that says when you take this heritage, you choose a type of animal such as bat, eagle, shark, spider, tyrannosaurus, wasp, or wolf. That's just a bunch of different examples on the type of animals you can pick.
If you choose
Aaron-
wasp, do you become really good at making meatloaf?
Oh.
Yes, I guess so. If for the sake of the joke, you do.
Yes.
Aaron the Paisley just wants you to know that he just cleaned his paintbrush in his drinking water.
That is
Oh,
a
no.
crucial mistake,
We've
and
all
I
been
think
there, though.
everyone has done it.
Yes.
Oh, and you know what? It's better than the opposite.
Mm,
Drinking your paintbrush water.
that's true.
Dom is patting himself on the back because he predicted that the one unannounced ancestry/heritage was going to be the Beastkin, specifically
Congrats.
by that name.
Congrats.
Well, there you go.
You even shared
Good
a
for
screen
you.
cap of it in the Discord.
We thought prophecy was broken, but I guess Dom is beyond that power.
All right. I am in a whole chunk where people are talking about the Beastkin because at this point I am done with the curation. V, you talk for a minute and I'll see if I can make some sense of these.
I saw
comments.
a lot of questions where people wanted to hear about the Gilman, also known by their new name
As Arcadi, yeah.
as Arcadi. They're in here. They're super cool.
Yes, we had this book in the production schedule, assuming that the Absalom book would be out by now, so people could have them and expand on them here. But unfortunately, that's not the case at the moment. So we're putting out the rules from the Absalom book with all the base information, the base stats, and stuff.
Oh, I
in
see.
a free PDF in just a few weeks, so you can use that to play with the stuff that we're giving you in this book. As Arcadi are really cool. I think Eleanor and I are really big fans of the really deep the Azarketi that live in like the deep chasms of the sea because they have
The one on
bioluminescence.
the left of your screen right now is that heritage.
She looks so cool.
They have glowing lights built into them because bioluminescence is really awesome. And then it turns out the way Azarketi kind of leaned is they're really into hydrokinesis. They can manipulate water a lot and use it to make shields and like stuff like that. So if you want a little taste of some kineticism that isn't using a legendary kineticist, you can touch the grab the Azarketi to do that.
Okay, cool. People are
I have some more
also.
questions. Oh,
I
go
have
ahead,
some
V.
more questions. I know.
You
I
go.
saw. I was been looking too. People have been asking about the changelings. What new things can we expect to see about changelings?
You will see 3 more of the lineages. That's I think 3 of them were in the APG, or maybe it was 4.
We get 4 in this book. It looks like. 4
do you
new
want
ones.
to tell them one of them?
Sure. Let me roll a d4 and see what they get. It looks like it's the Moon May, your mother was a moon hag.
Ooh.
And you can cast guidance as a cantrip. And that's your lineage ability. So there you go. And there's 3 other ones to look forward to as well.
I'm
Awesome.
sure people are like putting a magnifying glass to the screen and can
Oh, yeah.
probably tell you everything else that's in this book by the time we're done here.
Folks also really wanted to see the Leshy art, so I'm gonna show that up there. Is there
Please.
anything fun about the Leshies that you want to talk about?
You can be a potato.
You could be a
That's my okay, so story time. We ran like the 20 level dungeon that I think Monty Cook wrote or whatever.
okay.
So like on the first or second level we ran into what was described to us as a potato-like creature with wings that was cleaning our room. It was supposed to be a homunculus, but we called it the cleaning potato, and we obsessed over trying to get that potato out of the room without destroying it, which was the
Aw.
main problem. Because we knew if we took it out, um, we might destroy it. So we spent the entire campaign, like 1 to 17 or whatever, trying to get a dumb winged potato out of this one
Oh
room
my god.
because we were obsessed with the cleaning potato. So anyway, you can be a potato leshy, and if you put a versatile heritage on it, you can probably fly at some point. So you can be the cleaning potato, and that's all that matters to me.
Or
That's all that
if you
matters.
throw the Ifrit on it, you can be a hot potato.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah, we've got seaweed leshies, root leshies, lotus leshy. No sundew leshy, which it would be my personal favorite. But
There's only so many leshy we can fit in one
There's
product.
so many lushies.
I
Oh
don't
my
know if
goodness.
that's true.
There is. The character guide gives you a list of all the leshies, and I think there's like a dozen different leshies.
Oh my gosh.
my
There's
And you
so
could
many.
probably add more. There's no reason why you can't.
Yeah.
Exploding leshy.
Pollen leshy.
I just want my little sticky girl with her little sticky fingers to like just want to give you the stickiest of hugs.
Play an ooze more fleshy.
Oh, that's true. I could do that. That'd be fun. All right, any other questions, Ryan?
Yes, I got the last of the questions that we're going to go through today.
Sure.
And I apologize to anyone that we are not getting to. And I thank you for being so active in chat tonight, Doll.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Will there ever be a trollkin, half ogre, or just other large PC ancestry?
Never say never, I feel.
Yeah, I think once the barrier is broken on large ancestries, maybe. I mean, people have brought up a half giant sort of thing. We'd have to tiptoe very carefully around the Goliath and the half giants from Dark Sun, but we'll see.
Yeah, we can make it our own. No problem. Maybe Ancestry Guide 2 will be the big ancestries.
Ancestry Guide 2. Go big or go home.
Yeah.
All right. A couple of questions about the Shuni. Nobody's specifically asking why they're not in here.
They missed the boat.
Yes.
Oh.
Oh, any rules for creating ancestries or heritages?
That's not in here. I mean, we had something like that at the end of the advanced race guide, but because there's so many more moving parts to an ancestry, my recommendation is just look at what we've built and see, like, you know, where we're giving out things like spells and you know, extra attacking abilities or flight and things like that, and kind of gauge that against the existing ancestries if you want to make your own.
That's probably something that if it shows up would show up in like a core rule book, because that tends to be where the guidance for these sorts of things pops up. But you know, never say never. We'll see.
Sure, Longtail wants their Knoll dudes to be heroes too.
You're gonna have to wait for Wangi Expanse,
which is what, in like 4 months?
It's June currently. It's the scheduled date.
Yeah.
Okay.
But since they have to wait, I will tell a fun little thing, which might be my favorite part of that heritage and possibly the book. There is a heritage for Null called an ant Null that is small in size.
Google it.
and it looks like an aardwolf. And if you don't know what that is, you can Google it. But it is part of the hyena family, but they're just very small. But
Like
my
a-
favorite thing about it is it doesn't change their base stats, which means they get a +2 to strength despite being small.
Yes.
They're like a
And so-
Scrappy Doo.
And so, like, people think they are called ant gnolls because they are small and cute and fluffy, but it's also because they can still pick you up and throw you.
And like Shiro Longtail in chat is saying, small knoll.
Small knoll.
Small no.
All right, we have our last 4 questions.
Okay.
Are there any ancestries you really want to put into this book that didn't make the cut?
Oh, I don't know if we should say those because they might make a cut elsewhere.
Yeah,
I mean, there were a few things that we realized. Oh, if we wait one book, we can suddenly put an Anadi in the Wangi book and the Gripply in the Wangi book and stuff like that. But there's maybe a few that are still out there that we'd like to get in when we can. And
yeah, there's some that we can't talk about.
No, we'll be hush
So we're not going to tell you.
It is the year of the ancestry.
It is.
And you know what? It's a yes or no question. So are there ancestries?
Yes.
Kitsune Roylock wants to know, can the pufferfish beastkin puff up to huge?
You can buff up to large. There's a 13th level feat that says when you transform into your hybrid form, you know, your part animal, you just automatically become large. And as long as you maintain your hybrid form, you just will always be large. So that's as close as you can get for the moment.
Is it strictly large, or is it like if
It casts enlarge on you? You get the
Okay.
continual effects of first level enlarge. So, and in theory, if someone manages to dispel it, you're like, oh no, and then you just change back to your hybrid form, and it happens again.
That's pretty cool. I kind of want that on my little like pixie beastkin then.
Or you could do that on
Little sprite.
a sprite beastkin who goes from tiny to large, and without having to be a barbarian.
Whenever you want. That would be pretty fun.
Someone wants serpent folk.
I also want serpent folk. However, you may have to convince James Jacobs for that.
I could see us doing a snake-like ancestry, but that wouldn't necessarily be serpent folk. They might be a separate thing. Who knows?
Well, there was that Medusa-like ancestry you were talking about. Is that going to be
Yeah,
legs or
there's
tail?
the Stheno, I think, have legs, and
Yeah, they have legs, and they're
likewise,
just a little.
so
snakes.
so do the Nagashi, which were the other serpentine sort of.
I guess serpent folk also have legs. So if you want something that's slithering around, that'd be something even more unique at that point.
I mean, flesh warped, beastkin.
There
There's
you go.
options.
Done.
Yeah,
Can do it right now.
Unless you want serpent folk because you like their culture, but like if you just like
Right.
snake people, you could. There's now snake people options.
There's snake people.
If you like serpent folk culture, you can slither around and kill people and whine about your superiority without needing
Oh
to
my god.
have mechanical options specifically for that.
Please don't do that. Folks are asking for Zolgaths and Darklands creatures, maybe?
Maybe if people have expressed interest in sort of a Darklands ancestry book, and we'll
just
see.
Just a Darklands book and the ancestries can be in there. That'd be pretty cool.
That could be a thing, like we're doing with the Manga Expanse. When we find a region and have places where it makes sense, we might throw in an ancestry or 4, or who knows.
Those are the only 2 options. 1,
Yes, flood or 4. That's it. It's very weird for figuring out the page count.
Yeah, so something layout. It's fine.
So the last question that I've got is, what is one feat that you're excited about in the book?
I mean, I was gonna say the dire form feat for the beastkin that makes you big, but I already said that. So I'm gonna talk about one of the hobgoblin feats.
Oh.
So the hobgoblin story, the folklore is that they were created from some artifact called the Cantorian Spring, way back in the years before anything had been created in Galarian, and that Cantorian Spring had great power, and now we're talking in this book explaining how that power still kind of sometimes flows through hobgoblins and lets them do things like heal people, which is obviously what everyone thinks about when hobgoblins come to mind.
Right.
So there's like a set of Cantorian feats that you can take, and the 9th level one just lets you heal yourself for for a fair amount once per day, whenever you need it, because you tap into that power that's tied to the ancient history of hobgoblins.
So, Eleanor, before you answer your question, I also want to give a shout out to the overview of the expanded ancestries and heritages. Whoever wrote these paragraphs did an amazing job of just capturing what these ancestries are. I feel like I have a better understanding of everything that's listed here than I have from reading the entire chapter in the book they previously appeared in.
That's good.
Oh,
We like being informative. So I have two things that two feats that, well, one is actually sort of a feat line. James Case wrote these really cool Tengu Fan Feats that sort of built on each other, where the Tengu made a magical fan out of their own feathers and used it to cast magic. It got cut for space in the APG, and so we brought it back here.
oh.
But my favorite feat, just because I have owned a cat, is called Catfolk Dance, where you deliberately get in somebody's way and tank their reflex score
Oh my
because you're a
gosh.
crappy little cat.
Oh
The
my.
cat folk feats in all books that they've appeared in at this point definitely feel like they come from personal experience.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that is amazing. I want the dance. I want the catfolk dance.
You can have the
Well,
cat folk
play a
dance.
catfolk. It's I think it's only a level 1 feat. You could make a catfolk and have it right now.
That is so awesome. On a critical success, they're also flat-footed. That is amazing.
So yeah, thank you both. We've been talking about the Ancestry Guide for an hour and a half. I feel like we really got some great insight into this. If anyone was on the fence about this book, I think you've got to have convinced them by now. There's so much, there's so many layers of interesting things here, and just it covers so many ancestries that even if just one option in this book appeals to you, I have a feeling that you can get several characters out of it. Like I have several flesh warped plans now.
Oh,
This is the year of the flesh warped for me. Everyone else can have the rest of the ancestries.
you gross. No, bad.
That's the
I look
point,
forward
me.
to I look forward to you being kicked off of every game that you try to apply to because you're so disgusting.
Well, it's like the Strix wing cloak. Like when I reveal the cloak, it's going to be way different than just a regular Strix under there. I know.
Gross.
Yeah.
Gross.
What if he's a champion? Then will you feel better?
No?
Yeah,
I
do you remember those Calvin and Hobbes strips where like the alien or like the little disgusting food monsters that Bill Watterson would draw that
Yes.
were just like this gross lump of stuff with eyes sticking out the top? That's what I think of right now when I think flesh warp. It's
Uh-huh.
just those little grubby things that are running around with a giant grin on their face.
So before we let you go, is there anything you want to shout out to, bring attention to? Luis, we can start with you.
Oh, I don't know.
Start with the obvious.
The Lost Omens line manga expanse is coming in a few months, and then the Grand Bazaar after that. It's going to be, I think, a fun time for anyone that's into Pathfinder. Just lots of cool stuff. Otherwise, you can check out stuff I do at luisloza.com, but who cares about all that right now? Ancestries are the important thing.
Yeah, I think
What
you should
about
check
stuff
out.
you do for NoDirectionPodcast.com?
Oh, I trust you to plug that at the end of the show. Okay, fine. Hey, I write Monsters for Zeke. I just gave you a groundhog, playable groundhog for Starfinder, and I GM Valiant, and also I am half of Legend Lore with Luis and Lauren. I am the lore part, and Lauren is the legend part.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I mean, as the shout out, it is Black History Month, so just go and look at some of the authors on the Mwangi Expanse who do all sorts of other cool RPG projects, and also you can go to a website called Calico Games. It has a product called Short Order Heroes that I didn't design, I illustrated all of, and you can use it to randomly generate NPCs or flavors or even plot twists or events or relationships by pulling a random card from the deck and using it as sort of a procedurally generated NPC or plot creator. And it's cool and it doesn't get enough attention. So that's my shout out.
This
Eleanor
is very cool. V, have you called it up?
I'm trying to
Eleanor
get it
even
now.
uses it when we're doing stuff on our work to like flesh out NPCs that show up in our books here and
Yeah,
there.
if you go to the character guide and you see like little sidebars in the NPC section that gives them like a base personality, I made those using the short order heroes deck. I
Very
just
cool.
drew 3 cards and came up with a story based on those adjectives.
And you did the art for all the cards.
Yep.
I had no idea you also had art talents.
I do. In fact, if you go to Rogue Genius Games on what is it? Drive Through RPG.
Drive through, yeah.
Yeah. There are some Skittermander minis or Skitter minis, if you'd like to call them that you can print out and turn into paper minis for your Starfinder game. Also, you can bug the crap out of Owen Casey Stevens to put up the rest of the minis I gave him, which involve some more Lamaz and some aliens from Outpost Z against the On Throne. If you want more of those.
I do want to point out Owen is having quite a year, and he's talked about it a lot in his blog.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I know.
unless you really want those, please don't bug Owen.
Aw.
Ask nicely.
There we go.
Yes, ask
Yeah.
nicely. Don't bug him, but tell him you wish to exchange money for product.
That's true. That might get his attention.
All right. Well, I want to thank you both again. This was really fun. This was really informative. And you are both excellent guests. So we're looking forward to having you on in a couple of months. Actually, I don't know if we'll have you on to talk about Mind Geek Expanse or if we'll bring on some of the authors that you were just talking about.
Yeah, I
That's
think
something
the
we'll talk
authors
about
would be
That would be
a
super
great
cool.
perspective.
I think you should bring on some of the authors.
Mhm.
And if you
Alright.
have time afterwards, you can talk to us losers.
This is definitely not your last time on the show this year.
Sounds
Definitely
almost
not.
like a threat.
You'll be back.
You'll be
Dun,
back.
dun, dun.
And you're gonna
I
like
always
it.
come back. All right, V, if you got a little time, I want to talk about Abomination Vaults and your contribution to it right after this.
Sure.
Bye. Thank you.
All right, bye, Louise.
Bye.
Bye, Lee.
Oh,
Eleanor.
right.
Thank you.
So Ryan,
V, I just got my volume 1 of Abomination Vaults.
oh, very exciting.
This one is written by James Jacobs, which is also exciting on top of everything. The
Mhm.
Ruins of Gauntlight. I have not read it. I flipped through it because I've figured that I'm never going to play in it, so I have permission to read through it, and maybe I'll even run it someday. We'll see. And it's pretty exciting. And you are the one that wrote the next volume in this. Now, this is a 3-part AP. It is a mega dungeon.
It is.
And I feel like writing the middle section of a mega dungeon is the most challenging part.
It was. So the second part is Hands of the Devil, and it's interesting because looking at like the overall plot summary of the AP, the first part has a lot of plot because it has to get you into the adventure and kind of figure out what's going on and get you into the dungeon. And then the second part is there's a bunch of dungeon stuff in the middle that needs to be cool. And then the third part is resolving that plot that you started in the first part. And so even though there's plot development a bit in the second, you find out a little more about how these abomination vaults came to be and things like that. It's very sandboxy. And on one hand, sandbox is kind of fun because you aren't, both as a player, as a GM, and as an author, you're not stuck with a certain railroad of what you have to do next, right? I have to go to area A and then B and then C. But on the other hand, to create like interesting story moments is a bit more challenging. And so I usually approach it from the point of view of what is going on in these dungeons, who's doing what to whom, and see if you can plant that information so that while you're going along in your sandbox, you're picking up clues and sort of putting the story together. And hopefully I've done a good job of that.
Chi Talk has a question, which also includes the request for no spoilers. So I should mention, let's try and avoid spoilers as much as possible
no
in this
spoilers.
conversation. All right, so was wondering about the most enjoyable and least enjoyable part about writing the middle section.
Let's see. So I think the most enjoyable part is I'm going to give a little bit of how the sausage is made on this one. They did an experiment and said, okay, authors, here is your maps, do something with it. And they
Oh,
didn't have a
classic.
lot. Yeah. And they didn't have a lot of detail to them. Like all the outlines were there and all the rooms and the doors and stuff were there. But like we didn't necessarily know what was in each room. There was some description because this is an old ruin. It used to be something else, and now it's whatever it is that you write that's in there. So the history of the place is there too, which is kind of cool. But you don't know what this specific room is for, right? You just know that it's in this general area where certain things are happening. And so because of that, it was really kind of fun to just come up with like, okay, so if you have such and such area and it's been sitting there for centuries, what's there now? Like what happened to it? And how can you, through the room description, through what's there, how can you sort of illustrate what maybe this once was used for versus what it's used for now? And so that was both fun and challenging.
Oh, so it's a combination.
It's a combination. And then on just the challenging note, I'd say the most challenging thing is, like I was saying, like trying to tell a coherent story. So a lot of it, I put these little pieces in, but I also figured like the players are going to want a drive. They need a drive, right? They need a reason to say, we need to delve deeper. We need to go and like keep the pressure on. And so for that, I had to sort of weave in some side stories that develop as you get deeper in the dungeon and theoretically more time is going by, that there's a ticking clock essentially that's in there in the form of a side story, just to keep you like, we need to do this thing. And so I'm really excited for players to play through that, but it was a little bit of a challenge to be like, how do you keep the pressure on when you're at the free form sandbox part of the adventure?
That is one of my favorite things about mega dungeons, is figuring out, or like seeing how the author figured out where to
Mm,
put like a shop equivalent, and the things
mm,
that if they could just go to the surface anytime, these would be
mhm,
the convenient things that the game kind of assumes they have.
mhm.
So has there been a workaround? Has there just been an equivalent? What has been it, what has been substituted for these
Right.
tropes?
I see folks asking about the contents of the book, and I am not authorized to talk about that until the book's release. So I can't tell you what's in there, but there's a contract devil on the front, so there's probably one in the adventure somewhere, and maybe information about contract devils. But since
Uh,
it,
since we're talking about what's on the front, though, I really
yeah,
like the dressing. I hadn't really paid attention to it until it arrived in the mail, and I opened it up, and it's like, oh, that's a cool shade of greenish gray, and just a very nice dressing overall.
hmm
When you see the cover of an AP that you're working on, like the first time you see it, how does that affect your feelings towards that AP?
like one I've written or like one I'm gonna play.
When you've written.
Really, when it's one I've written, it's for me, it's like it's very exciting to see the artwork, and the artwork on this is really fun and exciting. And I do like the green as well, and the tentacles everywhere. It really gives you that idea. Yeah, I know you like flesh warped. There's plenty of those throughout because it's
Yes.
aberrations abound.
Were you just saying ooh as you were writing the whole time?
Kind of.
Yes.
But it's actually helpful because that stuff grosses me out so much, and then I just am like, what about it grosses me out? And then I write that. And so I kind of just channel it into creative energy. But mostly, I think when I see the cover of something that I've written in existence, because usually it shows up right before release, it sort of is like a reminder, like, hey, remember how you wrote that a year ago? It's coming out, and it gets me all excited about it all over again. So,
Nashitalk has an interesting question. They're asking, will No Direction play Abomination Vaults after Agents of Edgewatch, which is not a No Direction production. That is a Roll for Combat
that's a roll
production.
for combat, yeah.
Yeah,
I
which is Agents of Edgewatch doesn't even have any KD cast, does it?
That one does not. No,
Okay.
that one's all roll for combat cast, and no shared members in that one. And maybe, I mean, I'm not sure what Stephen from Roll for Combat has in plan. Age of Edgewatch is of course a big, very long AP, so it's possible. I know that like reading through it again though, I really, really want to run it. I don't know when I would ever have time for that, but I just like I was rereading because I got my own little copy of it, and I was sort of flipping through to see like how it had been developed by Ron Lundeen, who, by the way, did a marvelous job. There were moments in there I'm like, this is pretty good, and then I read his stuff and I'm like, oh, he made it better. Okay. He put that cherry on top of the sundae that just is like, ooh, an extra little bit of hot sauce, you know, a little chocolate sauce. It's like, yeah, okay, this is so much better. And I'm just really excited reading through it. I'm like, I want to run this for somebody. Like the whole 3 parts, that's fine, but it's cool. There's some fun stuff in there.
Yeah, so I have a similar I want to run it vibe because I
Okay.
know I am not good at published adventures running them. The memory part of my brain is way weaker than the creative part of my brain, and I just get confused about what is actually in the books.
Mm-hmm.
But because this is a mega dungeon, it feels like it's a little freer, it's a lot more sandboxy, and so it might be a good blend of like, here's cool maps, here's cool resources, but also I have freedom as a GM to go off book. And
Right.
so then I was like, oh, but this is also tied into the beginner box adventure that leads into Trouble in Otari and then
Mhm.
becomes Abomination Vault. And I had an idea for like a very beginner's game with inexperienced players. So I could start with beginner box, move on to Trouble in Otari, move on to Abomination Vault. So it's like, and now I've just planned out a 2-year podcast that I have no time for. So
Well, one of the things that they did that was interesting is they basically took the beginner box and made it so that it could lead into basically either Troubles in Otari or Abomination Vault. And if you wanted to do both, you could, but the challenge there is that Troubles in Otari Troubles in Otari basically take you to a high enough level that you would already be starting on book 2 of Abomination Vaults. But because it's multiple leveled, you know, all the different layers of the dungeon, you would have out leveled it. So you could probably do it, but you might want to trim combats here and there, things like that, to try and do a blend of the two, like at the same time, which would be a really big challenge. But I think the intention was that, hey, we finished beginner box, and you have to say, well, do we want to do like 1 module's worth of stuff next, or do we actually want to commit to 3 books of an adventure path?
So what could happen, and we haven't talked about this, but no, this is too much stuff that is not actually happening and stuff that is being discussed as it's coming to my brain. I cannot do that.
Okay.
But what I could do is have the same cast go through beginner box, then into Trouble in Otari,
Mm-hmm.
and then new characters with same cast go into Abomination Vault, and that way they're familiar with the setting,
Oh,
people
yeah.
are familiar with the players, and they were beginners, so they're not committed to
Mm-hmm.
the same characters that they made when they were newbies.
That's true. That's actually not a bad idea at all. So the way they, especially someone who's, like you're saying, going through beginner box or getting used to second edition, and by the time you get done with Troubles in Otari, you're like, you know what, I should have done this a little different. Or, you know, I, like you always play marshals, and all of a sudden you're like, but Oracle sounds cool. Like gives you a chance to try something new. So that's a good idea.
And there's always new books coming out, so it's like, I was a beginner, I made a character out of the core rulebook, but now there's Flesh Warped, there's Inventors. How am I supposed to go back to a sword when there's guns in the setting that I could have?
Right? Some kind of chemist suggests the podcast name could be the AV Club.
I think it's taken.
It probably is.
Wasn't the AV Club a really big website? What happened to the AV Club?
I don't know.
I haven't heard anything about the AV Club in a long time. Anyway, not going to check that now. You did look up the Oracle, though, and I recently played an Oracle in a game that you were GMing, refereeing, the announcer for.
Yes, Super Smash Finder. You played an Oracle in that.
So we got a couple of minutes. Do you want to talk
Sure.
about how Match 3 went, the debut of the KD Chimeras?
Sure. So Super Smash Finder is a Pathfinder Second Edition gladiatorial combat show on Twitch, and so you can go find it. It's Super Smash Finder. And the KD Chimeras are one of our teams. It's really fun. So in order to figure out who's going to play this darn thing, myself and Jason Lillis, who's my partner in crime in this, reached out to a bunch of different podcasts for Pathfinder and Starfinder and said, hey, do you want to play? And they said, sure. So we've got some really fun folks to play with, which is great. And you guys, you lost your match. How do you feel about that?
Well, you calling us the team to beat at the beginning put a lot of extra pressure on us. We had no idea if these characters were going to work at all.
Okay, so Lauren made fun of me saying that she didn't think anyone had said that, and absolutely people were. People were like, wait, No Direction is participating? And I was like, yeah, no big deal. And they're like, you're just going to be biased. I'm like, I swear I won't. My capacity in this show is different than on No Direction. It's no bias. And in fact, I was going to try and get another referee by then, but because it's sort of near the beginning of our exposition matches, I'm kind of being a bit precious about it until we kind of get a nice flow, and then I'll probably bring a guest ref on. But people had been talking like they're expecting some big things, and so I didn't mean to put extra pressure on, but I kind of also did, mostly just to get Lauren's goat, but because I know how excited she is about, like, she loves strategy games, she loves Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I knew this would be right up her alley, and she is, of all of the different team members on all of the different teams, I think she's the one that I've spoken to that's been most excited.
Yeah, we have a Discord going just for real-time strategizing, and Lauren was just exploding. Anytime anyone did anything, it's like, here's how we've got to adjust our strategy. Here's what we got to do. Oh my goodness, we don't have enough time. What is happening?
Yeah, and one thing I think that she was frustrated on that I'm also trying to figure out a way around is that we only really had time for like 3 rounds of combat. We could have done 4, but we would have kind of gone over on time, and I'm trying to, like, kind of like we are with guests on here on No Direction, I'm trying to be precious with people's time, right? I rounded up 10 people, including myself, and said, hey, look, we're going to take 2.5 hours or, of your time, and that's it. And once that's over, you're done, and that's your commitment. And I really don't want to go past that. And so, with 30 minutes of setup and 2 hours on air, like, as I'm approaching, there's 15 minutes left in the show, I'm like, we're at the end of the round, I gotta call it. We don't have time for a 4th round. But yeah, I know it's tough when the rounds are so short. She's like, every action counts, every die roll makes a difference. I'm like, yeah.
I know that I made my character with some assumptions about it being a short match, and so I made him as fast as possible. He was a goblin with 35-foot move, and I was the slow one on my team because apparently everyone's better at making really fast characters. One of the options I didn't get to use was where I latch onto another a target's leg, and then when they move, they bring me with them. So if they're trying to get somewhere strategically, well, then I would be there too, and I could just get off and attack them after the fact. Or they could spend their turn just trying to get me off their leg or fighting me while on their leg. But that, even just the setup to get that done takes so long that by the time I had an opportunity to do it, I didn't have the opportunity to do it.
Right. Yeah, I've found that generalist characters are generally working better than specialist characters. So if you're just like, I'm a character that has a high amount of movement, a good athletic score, and one niche trick that I've built myself around, like, you'll probably be pretty successful, especially if that trick comes up, versus highly specialized characters that are like, okay, here's the plan. I'm going to set up this perfect situation, and then I will just dominate everything. Those are tricky because there's only a few rounds of combat, and you have to set all that up, so.
Yeah, you basically described my character. He's fast, good athletics, got a couple of tricks up his sleeve.
Well, then that's good.
And, I scored 0 points. I was the only one on either team
to
score 0 points, but I had big moments.
You had big moments. And here's the thing, the individual scoring by character, I think, is just interesting. Like, I've included that just because people like statistics. They want to know, like, ooh, who's scoring the points. But you had some pretty important moments when they had grabbed the flag to the other side of the arena. You went over there and grabbed it away from them. And I thought that was going to prevent them from scoring completely. But they, unfortunately, were able to get it back from you. But I thought that was going to be clutch. Like, that was a whole game changer the second you grabbed that flag.
It was very exciting.
It was very exciting. And then, of course, Lauren's character was just murdering everything. She was just getting a bunch of points from damage and debuffs, like, left and right. And I also was thinking, like, heck, if your team just focused on damage output and was like, sure, take the flag, whatever, like, we'll slow you down, but you're going to cap it, doesn't matter because we're just, like, hitting you every round. Like, that's a viable strategy, too.
So that was one of the first things Lauren brought up in our private chat. She was like, oh, the flag counts for so many points. And it's like, Lauren, it's capture the flag.
Yeah.
If the flag didn't count for an outrageous number of points, we would just be fighting each other with a flag in the middle of the battlefield.
Right. Exactly, and that's why it had to be enough points that like even if the other team captured it, it was possible to win. But at the same time, like it's gonna be really difficult. And honestly, you came pretty close. I think they had one member of their team that was also dealing damage to just keep their score high. And if it wasn't for that, like you easily could have just out damaged them and out debuffed them and just done enough of that stuff to eke out a win even with them capturing it. So it was very close. Another round or two may have swung it back for you. Who knows?
Speaking of them, I don't know if we've identified the other team yet. It was
Oh,
the Waffles Maple Syrup and their Out of the Depths
oh
team
my
with
gosh.
the everyone's a Dompier, everyone's based on a Johnny Depp character.
Uh,
There's puns aplenty.
so many puns. Yeah, they're a 5-person team, so they can only field 4 players at a time, but all 5 of them are Johnny Depp characters, and it's I don't know, it's pretty darn funny, honestly. Because I was going through it and I was like, is this a misspelling out of the depths? I don't know. Is this a Johnny Depp joke? And then I'm looking through, it's like the Mad Ratter. The one who didn't get fielded was Swooning Odd, who is a fighter that uses a razor blade. I'm like, okay, yeah, I see what you're doing there. And like, just they were all just so funny. Bat Sparrow.
And so it was a good combination of we were all being really competitive and taking the match seriously, but we were also being a lot of fun. And I thought we were funny. I thought we were lively.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great match.
I didn't tell anyone that my pre-match interview was going to be in Goblin. And,
Oh, that was amazing.
I wasn't sure. I had no idea if this was going to be funny or just insane.
No, I thought it was great. And I just played along like I understood what you were saying.
Yeah, that was good.
It's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, all right, great, yeah, oh, interesting, good insight. Okay, next up, it's like, sure, we get the gag, but yeah, that was hilarious. I thought you were going to continue doing that through the whole match and just speaking Goblin for the rest of the thing.
That up the whole match.
No, that would have been funny.
All right, well, I'll take that as a note for next time.
Okay. Well, maybe when we get a chance, I really want to do those Meet the Team episodes where we actually get to like have a longer form interview with each character talking about their capabilities and really get to know not just obviously the podcast behind the team, but the team itself and what to expect. I still want to do that with No Direction, and I think at that point, you're gonna have to interview that Goblin. You might have to get a translator on your team to be like.
What I'm thinking is I will pre-record like 100 minutes of the Goblin, and then you start playing it, and then I talk over it as though the translator, just in a really deadpan voice.
Yes.
Plans on biting onto their ankles and letting them carry him about the battlefield so that he may take advantage of their positioning and their proximity to his knives.
That'll be brilliant. Thank you.
All right. That's the plan right now.
For a listening audience, I had a laugh attack so bad that I almost choked, so. That silence was just me not dying. Well, I can't wait for that.
Do you know when exhibition match number 4 is going to be?
I don't have an announcement for that yet, but I will say that we're scheduling it. Scheduling these has turned out to be more difficult than we thought. Because of when this all came about, we're like, I don't know, it's quarantine, people are stuck at home, like I'm sure we'll get people that can do it, and sure enough we can, but not the entire team, not all of both teams at the same time. And then every once in a while it's like, well, there's both teams at the same time on this Wednesday, and I'm like, I'm doing No Direction Beyond, I can't, Wednesday's bad, I can't do that. And they're like, oh, okay. And then so we just keep looking for dates. So the doodle polls are out there in a flurry trying to get it done. And honestly, that's been I think the most challenging part of doing Super Smash Finder at this point has just been, well, one, it's just a lot of organization, and it's a lot of scaffolding. It's a lot of moving parts to get this working. But the scheduling, my goodness, the scheduling.
Yeah. So we started planning this maybe late December. And so the doodle covered all of January and then into February. And so I did my January dates, and then like I did the early February dates. And it's like, well, the first weekend of February is my daughter's birthday. And so I'm not going to schedule it on that day. Like the Friday is her birthday. The Saturday is her party. My wife is doing this going all out to get her this virtual party that really felt like it was still a birthday party. And
That's
I'm
cool.
not going to go up to Tina and say like, can I play a game on Scarlett's birthday? It doesn't technically interfere, but after all the work you're putting in, then can I go off and play? But it was literally the only day that all 7 other people that were in there were yeses for. So I was like, I guess I'm going to have to ask Tina if I can play. And she ended up being cool with it. We had a couple of hours grace between the party and the start of the game.
All right. Well, thank her for me.
I had a whole incident, which maybe we'll talk about in the private sanctum after party after the show.
Sure, we can do that.
And I think we're about ready to transition over to that.
All right. Well, so speaking of the private sanctum, if you are a No Direction Patreon member, you have special access to not only a special Patreon channel in our very fantastic Discord server, but you get to talk to us after the show, just very casually about what was going on. Also, definitely check out our Discord server. You can find it on our website at nodirectionpodcast.com, where not only will you find a beautifully working link to the Discord server, but pages and pages of blog content, links to all of our other shows, such as No Direction Beyond and Adventurous, and all the other actual plays we've got going on. That Intrepid Heroes is there. Like, there's so much content. So definitely head over and see the plethora of Pathfinder and Starfinder related options that No Direction is offering.
So, V, I want to thank you once again for stepping in, replacing Param when he had his weather emergency. And we want to thank Luis and Eleanor for joining us and just like really bringing it. They know their stuff. We can ask them anything about the books that they've worked on. And they not only have stories and answers, but they have, I guess that's it. They've got stories and answers.
They have those 2 things. Well, they work together so well.
And they're fun.
They're fun, and they make such a good team. Like, I don't know, a lot of the other like developers or things are like, this is my line, this is what I'm working on. Or even if they're like, oh yeah, the 2 of us are developers on this line, it's like, well, I do the odd books and they do the even books. Like, but the 2 of them just work hand in hand so well together. They're just such a solid team. It's actually fantastic to have both of them on and see that, I don't know, the fruits of their labor and teamwork in action, I suppose. The chemistry, yes.
So until next time, I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Vanessa Hoskins.
And if you want to find the path, you need No Direction.